Halloween. There's something about that night that makes the line between fun and fear almost disappear. Every year, millions of people dress up as monsters, ghosts, killers, and demons. They laugh, they take pictures, they knock on doors asking for candy. But on the one night when everyone pretends to be a monster, some people don't have to pretend. All they need is a mask. I used to think Halloween was harmless. Just another excuse to party, to drink, to act like someone else for a night. But once you hear what I'm about to tell you, you might never look at Halloween the same way again. Years ago, there was a guy named Nick. He threw the biggest Halloween parties in town. The kind where the music shakes the walls, and the air smells like smoke, beer, and something burning in the background. Everyone thought that night would be just another wild celebration until the screaming started. Minutes later, the party became one of the bloodiest nights anyone there would ever remember. Then there was a man who lived alone in a small corner house with no upstairs, no neighbors nearby. It was late, way past the time for trick-or-treaters, when he heard a knock at his front door. Soft at first, then louder. He thought it was kids playing a prank, but when the knocking moved from his front door to his bedroom door, he realized those footsteps didn't belong to any kids. And somewhere else, a 14-year-old boy was home alone, answering the house phone while his mom was out with his little sister. Every call was the same, just the sound of quiet breathing on the other end. Until finally, a deep, slow voice whispered, "I'll be paying you a visit tonight." The boy thought it was a joke until the lights went out, and the knocking began. Halloween is supposed to be fun, but it's also the perfect night for something darker to come alive. For the wrong kind of people to step out of the shadows hidden behind masks, laughing while no one realizes the danger standing right beside them. Sometimes the streets aren't full of trick-or-treaters. Sometimes they're full of hunters. Tonight, you'll hear 4 true Halloween stories. Stories told by people who lived through them. People who can still hear the knocking, the screams, the sound of boots stomping up the stairs. Some of them made it out alive. Others didn't. So if you're listening to this right now, turn off the lights, sit back, and if you hear a sound behind you while I'm telling these stories, don't turn around too quickly, because on Halloween night, sometimes the thing listening isn't the wind. I was 22 that year, old enough to think I'd seen everything, too young to understand that real horror doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly behind laughter, behind music, behind the illusion that you're safe because everyone else is smiling. That Halloween, I went to a party hosted by my best friend Nick. He loved Halloween more than anyone I'd ever met. Every year his parents would fly to New York for their own celebration, leaving the house to him, and he'd turn it into a full-blown haunted maze. He'd build fake walls out of cardboard, hang webs and flickering lights, cover the living room with fog. The place looked like a movie set built for chaos, and that night, it lived up to it. I could describe the drinks, the smoke, the loud music, but that's not what matters. What matters is the moment when the laughter stopped. Me, Nick, and 3 other guys, Vinny G, Joey, and Q, were upstairs in his room passing a bong around when we heard it. 2 heavy bangs from downstairs. At first, we laughed it off. Maybe someone dropped a prop, or one of the fake coffins collapsed. But then came the screaming, real screaming. Dozens of voices shouting over the music panic. Not fun. Nick stood up so fast he nearly tripped over the carpet. He ran to the door, cracked it open, and froze. Even in the dim light, I could see the color drain from his face. He shut the door softly, locked it, and leaned back against it, shaking. "We need to hide," he whispered. That was all we needed to hear. He killed the lights. The room went black except for the glow from the stereo. Joey and Nick crawled into the closet. I slid under the bed with Q. Vinny G climbed into the storage chest near the wall. For a few seconds, the only sound was our breathing, and then even that stopped as the music downstairs suddenly cut out. Someone yelled. The man's voice deep, furious. "Everybody shut up!" he shouted. Then came another sound. A single sharp bang, followed by silence. Somewhere below us, someone had been shot. The air in the room changed. It felt thicker, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Then, from the hall, came the sound of boots stomping up the stairs, heavy, deliberate steps that stopped right outside the bedroom door. The doorknob rattled once, twice, locked. A pause, then the sound of a shoulder slamming against the wood. Another, and another. When that didn't work, the next sound was deafening. 2 gunshots into the lock. The door swung open. Through the thin sheet hanging off the bottom of the bed, I saw them: black boots, ripped jeans, a long coat. The man didn't speak. He just moved slowly toward the closet. I could hear Nick's voice tremble as he begged, "Please, please don't shoot. I'll give you whatever you want." The intruder's voice was muffled behind some kind of mask. "You the owner?" he asked. Nick nodded. The man told him to come downstairs. Nick obeyed, his steps shaking the floor as he disappeared down the hall. Joey stayed silent in the closet, too afraid to breathe. From downstairs, we could hear the muffled voices: Nick talking, another man shouting, then another set of gunshots. The next time we heard Nick's voice, he was crying. After what felt like 20 minutes, the front door slammed. The house fell quiet again. The kind of silence that doesn't feel safe, it feels hollow. Nick came back upstairs, pale as a ghost. He told us they were gone. When we finally dared to step into the hallway, the smell hit us first: gunpowder and iron. In the living room, 2 people lay dead, Jen and Robbie, their bodies twisted in unnatural ways, blood pooling under their heads. I'll never forget that sight, or the sound Nick made when he fell to his knees beside them. The police arrived an hour later. They questioned everyone, took statements, bagged evidence. Nobody cared about the drugs or the alcohol. They only cared about the 4 masked intruders who had stormed the house. 4 men in fedoras, gloves, and Guy Fawkes-style masks. They demanded $100,000 in cash, then told Nick to fill their sack with anything valuable. When he couldn't, they forced everyone to throw in their wallets and jewelry. Jen and Robbie tried to run. That's when the shooting started. Nick was never the same after that night. The house, once filled with laughter and music, became a tomb. He started drinking more, missing classes. Eventually, he dropped out completely. When I saw him months later, he was sitting on the curb outside a liquor store with a blank stare and a bottle of whiskey in his hand. One night, I visited him. We talked for hours. He told me he still heard the screams every time he tried to sleep. He said the blood wouldn't come off his floor no matter how many times he scrubbed it. "I should have stopped the party," he whispered, tears rolling down his face. "They died because of me." I told him it wasn't his fault, but deep down, I knew he didn't believe that. By the summer of the next year, Nick was gone, found dead from a heroin overdose. I remember staring at his picture on the news, the same goofy smile he wore every Halloween, and realizing that maybe he never really survived that night. His body gave out in 2013. But part of him died the moment those masked men walked through his door. And that's the thing about Halloween, it blurs the line between pretending and reality. You never really know when the mask comes off, or if it ever does. It was my first Halloween in my own house. A small corner place with 1 floor, a narrow porch, and a basement that always smelled faintly of damp wood. My parents had helped me pay for half of it. I was 25, proud of my independence, proud to finally be on my own. It was almost 11 at night. The TV was playing some old horror movie marathon, and I was half watching, half scrolling on my phone. Outside, the neighborhood had gone quiet. The last trick-or-treaters had come and gone hours ago. Most of the houses around me had gone dark. Then came the knock. 3 steady taps on the front door. Not urgent, not aggressive, just patient. I glanced at the clock and frowned. 11:02. Too late for kids, too early for a drunk neighbor to come by. I didn't move at first. My gut told me it was one of those late-night pranksters kids filming reactions for YouTube, hitting random houses. Still, curiosity made me stand up. I peeked through the window beside the door, careful to keep the light off. Nobody there, just the empty porch, the pumpkins glowing faintly by the steps. I waited another minute, then shrugged and went back to the couch. Maybe it had been the wind. Maybe I was just letting the movie get to me. I'd barely sat down when the knocking came again, harder this time. Knock, 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 the same rhythm. I yelled out, "Get lost! Halloween's over!" My voice cracked halfway through the sentence, like I was trying too hard to sound confident. Silence. Then another 3 knocks, louder. This time I jumped to my feet and marched toward the door. My heart was pounding. Not quite fear. Not yet. Just anger mixed with unease. I swung the door open fast, expecting to catch some teenagers hiding behind the bushes. The porch was empty. The street was empty. Not a single sound. Not even crickets. Something about that silence hit me harder than the knocking. It was too still. I stepped out barefoot onto the cold wood of the porch, scanning the bushes, the driveway, even the shadows near my car. Nothing. My breath came out in little white clouds. I was alone. When I finally went back inside, I locked the door, both locks, top and bottom, and even slid the chain in place. Then I shut off the porch light and went straight to my bedroom. I locked that door too, just for good measure. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been watched the whole time I was outside. I turned the TV volume up, just enough to drown out the silence. But even over the sound of the movie, I thought I could hear faint, rhythmic tapping. My pulse started racing again. I muted the TV. The knocking was back. This time, slower, heavier. It took me a moment to realize it wasn't coming from the front door anymore. It was coming from my bedroom door. For a second, my mind refused to process it. I froze, staring at the doorknob as it shook gently, as if someone on the other side was testing it. Then came the sound of a palm slapping the wood. Then, another, harder, like whoever it was had lost patience. The knob turned back and forth. Locked. They started ramming it soft at first, then louder. Panic hit me like a wave. I looked around for anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on the small metal lamp by my bedside. I grabbed it, holding it like a bat, but my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The pounding stopped suddenly. I stood there, listening, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Then, footsteps. 2 pairs. Judging by the rhythm. Slow, heavy, crossing my living room floor. They were inside my house. I could hear the wood creak under their boots. Getting closer to my door again. I had one insane idea. It was risky, but it was all I had. My speaker system was still connected to my phone. I turned the volume to maximum, opened YouTube, and typed in .45 caliber gunshot sound effect. The first video that popped up, 3 seconds long. I pressed play. The sound exploded through the house, loud, echoing, terrifyingly real. I let one shot ring out, then paused it. In my most steady voice, I yelled, "That was a warning shot. Leave now, or the next one goes through your head." For a second, nothing happened. Then I heard it fast footsteps, 2 sets, running across the living room and out the front door. The slam of wood against the frame echoed like thunder. And then, silence again. I stood there for what felt like 10 minutes before I dared to open the door. The hallway light flickered as I peeked out. The front door was wide open, swinging slightly in the cold wind. I rushed to it, slammed it shut, locked it again, every lock, every chain, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. When the police arrived, they searched the house, the yard, even the street. Nothing. No footprints on the porch. No sign of forced entry. The officer told me I'd probably scared off a couple of kids, but I knew what I'd heard. Those weren't the footsteps of kids. They were too heavy, too deliberate. That night, after the cops left, I didn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch: the hum of the fridge, the creak of the pipes, even the wind outside. Around 3 in the morning, I caught my reflection in the black TV screen. My eyes were wide, my face pale. I looked like someone who'd seen something he couldn't explain. The next morning, sunlight made the house look harmless again. Just 4 walls, a roof, a porch. Normal. But even now, every Halloween since, I make sure to double lock every door before the sun goes down. I don't answer knocks after dark anymore. I don't even get up when the doorbell rings. Because sometimes, when you open that door, you're not letting in the night air. You're letting something else in, something that waits all year for Halloween to come back around. I was 14 that Halloween, too old to go trick-or-treating, too young to be doing anything else. My mom had taken my 8-year-old sister out for the night, leaving me home to hand out candy. I didn't mind. It made me feel older, responsible, like I finally had a job to do. I remember sitting on the couch, a bowl of candy beside me, watching the horror marathon on AMC. The house smelled like popcorn and candle wax from the pumpkin on the porch. It was just another Halloween night, quiet, ordinary until the phone rang. The sound made me jump. The kitchen phone had one of those old-fashioned, shrill rings that echoed through the whole house. I got up, grabbed the receiver, and said, "Hello?" Nothing. Just silence. I could hear faint static, maybe breathing, maybe the sound of someone holding their hand over the receiver. "Hello?" I said again. Still nothing. Then, a click. They'd hung up. I stood there for a second, staring at the phone, a weird chill running through me. Probably just a prank call, I told myself. It was Halloween after all. I shrugged it off, went back to the couch, and turned the TV volume up. Maybe half an hour passed before it rang again. Same number on the caller ID unknown. I rolled my eyes and picked it up anyway. At first, it was the same thing, silence. But this time, I could hear faint breathing on the other end. Slow, deep, steady, like someone listening to me. "All right, Steve, I know it's you," I said, thinking it was my friend messing with me. No answer, just the same breathing. "You're not funny, man," I added. But before I could hang up, I heard something faint, a whisper too quiet to understand. Then another click. By now, I was more annoyed than scared. I went back to the couch, muttering to myself, telling my own heartbeat to calm down. But as the night dragged on, the house grew quieter. Fewer kids rang the doorbell. The street outside looked emptier. When the phone rang the third time, I didn't even want to pick it up. I knew it would be the same thing again, but curiosity, it always wins. I grabbed the receiver. Silence again, then the breathing. But this time, after a few seconds, a voice spoke deep, slow, and low enough to make my skin crawl. "I'll be paying you a visit tonight." I froze. The words echoed in my ear. Then the line went dead. For a full minute, I stood there, staring at the receiver like it might start talking again. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. My mouth was dry. I slammed the phone down and turned all the lights on. I told myself it was just a joke. Steve probably found some creepy audio filter online and thought it'd be hilarious to freak me out. Yeah, that had to be it. 30 minutes later, the power went out. All at once, the TV, the lamps, even the humming from the fridge, everything died. The house fell into perfect darkness. For a second, I didn't move. I could hear my own breathing, too loud, too fast. Then came the sound of heavy knocking on the front door. I screamed before I could stop myself. The knocking grew faster, louder, angrier. I grabbed the flashlight from the counter and pointed it toward the hallway. But my hands were shaking so much that the beam bounced off the walls. I ran to the window and peeked through the blinds. It was pitch black outside. The streetlights were out too. And then I heard laughter. Low, muffled laughter from outside the front door. I recognized it instantly. Steve, my best friend. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me dizzy. I stormed to the door, yanked it open, and there he was doubled over, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "You should have seen your face, dude," he wheezed. I shoved him hard in the chest, almost knocking him off the porch. "Are you insane? You scared the hell out of me." He kept laughing, tears in his eyes. I said, "It didn't even sound like you on the phone. Let me hear you do that voice again." He stopped laughing, his grin fading a little. "What voice?" He said, confused. I didn't say anything. I just breathed into the phone. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean you didn't say anything?" "I swear," he said, looking serious now. "I just called from the payphone near the bar down the street. I thought it'd be funny to make those breathing noises. That's all." We stared at each other. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then I remembered the voice. The words. "I'll be paying you a visit tonight." Whoever said that, it wasn't Steve. We ran to the side of the house where the fuse box was. The metal door was open, hanging by one hinge. Every wire had been cut clean. No tearing, no fray, just snipped. Someone had been here. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Steve's face went pale. "We need to call your mom," he said. We bolted back inside, slammed the door, locked it, and dialed her number. She told us to stay put while she called the police. I could hear the fear in her voice, even though she tried to hide it. "Don't open the door for anyone," she said. The cops arrived 15 minutes later. They traced the payphone Steve used. It was the same one that the other call had come from. But the security camera outside the bar had been smashed earlier that evening. They never found who made that second call. When my mom got home, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. The cops stayed for another hour, checking windows and doors. But there was nothing left to find. That night, I slept on the couch with every light on in the house. Steve stayed too, neither of us saying much. Around 3 in the morning, I heard something outside a slow creak, like someone stepping on the porch. Steve heard it too. We sat there, frozen, staring at the front door, waiting for it to open, but it never did. Eventually, morning came. Sunlight filled the living room, warm and harmless. The kind of light that makes you question everything that happened in the dark. It's been years since that night, but every time I hear a phone ring late on Halloween, my stomach tightens. I still don't know who made that call. Maybe it was a sick prank, or maybe someone was really planning to come over until they saw the police cars pull up. Either way, I've never answered an unknown number since. Not once. Because sometimes the voice on the other end isn't a prankster. It's a promise. I was 12 when it happened, old enough to feel brave walking the neighborhood with friends, but still young enough to believe Halloween was supposed to be fun. That night, the air was cold and dry, our breath turning to mist as we laughed and ran from door to door. The streets were glowing orange from the jack-o'-lanterns lined up on porches, each one flickering like tiny watchful eyes. I was with my 2 best friends, Casey and Dylan. We wore cheap costumes, nothing scary, just hoodies and masks from the dollar store. We didn't need anything fancy. It was about the candy, the thrill of staying out late, the feeling of freedom. It started when we were halfway down Maple Street. A man was standing under the streetlight across from us, holding a lantern. Not a modern one, the kind you see in old horror movies, made of glass and brass, glowing with a dim yellow flame. He was tall, motionless, his face hidden behind a mask that looked like it had been carved from wood. The light flickered across the grooves, making it look alive like it was breathing. We stopped walking. The man didn't move. He just turned his head slowly in our direction. We laughed nervously, told ourselves he was probably just another adult getting into the spirit of Halloween. But when we moved to the next house, he did too. At first, it was subtle. Every time we left one porch and walked to the next, we'd catch a glimpse of him standing somewhere behind us. Always still, always watching. The first few times, we tried to shrug it off. But after the 5th house, even Dylan stopped laughing. When we turned around again, he was closer across the street now, half hidden behind a tree. The flame from the lantern swung gently in his hand, casting moving shadows across the pavement. We couldn't see his eyes, but somehow we could feel them on us. I remember whispering, "Let's just go back." Casey shook her head. "We're fine," she said, forcing a laugh. "It's probably just some dad messing with us." But even she didn't sound convinced. We kept walking, pretending not to care, trying to keep the conversation light. But every few steps, I couldn't help glancing over my shoulder. Each time, he was there, sometimes across the street, sometimes further down, sometimes standing behind a parked car. The way he moved was wrong. We never saw him actually walk. He'd just appear a little closer each time, like time skipped forward and brought him with it. At one house, we didn't see him at all, and for a moment, I let myself believe he'd gone. We knocked, said trick or treat, and got a handful of candy from a woman dressed as a witch. When we turned to go back down the steps, he was standing in the middle of the road, directly in front of us. The lantern flickered between us, the glass reflecting our faces. He tilted his head, the wooden mask creaking faintly. I don't remember deciding to run, we all just did. Candy spilled out of our bags as we sprinted down the street, our footsteps echoing in sync with our gasps for air. I looked back once, and the man was still standing there, but now the flame inside the lantern burned brighter orange and wild, like it was alive. We turned a corner, cutting through a small alley that led back to the main street. When we stopped to catch our breath, Dylan muttered, "What the hell was that?" None of us answered. The night was quiet again. Too quiet. Even the usual sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of other kids had vanished. The air felt heavy, still, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. We decided to knock on the next door we saw and tell whoever answered that someone was following us. A porch light flicked on before we even reached it. A man in a flannel shirt opened the door and smiled, the kind of easy smile adults give kids on Halloween. But when he saw our faces, his expression changed. "What's wrong?" he asked. There's a man following us," I said, panting. "He's wearing a mask. He's got a lantern." The man stepped out, scanning the street. "Where?" We all turned at once. The street behind us was empty. No lantern, no man, just the wind rustling through the trees. "He was just there," Dylan said, voice cracking. "He was standing right there." The man sighed, clearly unsure whether to believe us or not. "You kids need a ride home?" he asked. We shook our heads. We just wanted to be anywhere but there. He nodded and said he'd keep an eye out. As we turned to leave, I saw his face go pale. He was looking past us. I spun around and saw the faint glow of the lantern again at the end of the block, swaying slowly from side to side. The man stepped back into his house and said quickly, "Get inside." We did. He locked the door behind us. From the window, we watched the masked figure continue down the street, the flame bobbing with each step. He never looked our way, never hurried, just walked until the light faded into the night. We stayed in that stranger's house for almost half an hour before our parents arrived. They thanked the man for calling them and for keeping us safe. When we left, I glanced down the road one more time. The streetlights had come back on, but halfway down the block, there was a small patch of darkness, like the light refused to shine there. Later, one of my mom's friends told her that another family on a nearby street had seen a man matching that same description, tall, masked, carrying a lantern trying to lure kids toward the woods. When an adult yelled at him to stop, he disappeared into the trees. The police searched the area but never found him. It's been years since that night, but I still think about the way that lantern moved, the slow swing, the warm glow, the way it lit up the mask just enough for you to know there was a face behind it, but not whose. Now, every Halloween, I see flashes of that same yellow light in my head whenever I walk past a porch with a candle inside a pumpkin. That same glow, that same rhythm. And sometimes, when the wind dies down and everything goes quiet, I swear I can still see a faint light moving between the trees. Maybe it's just my imagination, or maybe he's still out there, waiting for the next group of kids to follow. Halloween has always been sold to us as a night of make-believe, a time when it's safe to flirt with fear, to open the door to the dark and laugh because you think you're still in control. But if there's one thing these stories have shown, it's that the real monsters aren't made of latex or makeup. They walk beside us. They hide behind cheap plastic masks. They knock on our doors. They whisper through phone lines. They follow quietly through the fog, waiting for us to forget that the world doesn't stop being dangerous just because we call it a holiday. Nick thought it was just another party, loud music, flashing lights, a house full of friends. He didn't know it would become the place where 4 masked men decided to turn fantasy into bloodshed. The man in the small corner house thought the knocks at his door were harmless kids, but the sound that followed those footsteps inside his home reminded him that sometimes the danger doesn't wait outside. It finds a way in. The boy who picked up that phone thought it was a prank. Maybe it started that way. But the difference between a joke and a threat is only a few words. I'll be paying you a visit tonight. That sentence is enough to turn every shadow into a shape, every creak into a warning. And those kids running through the streets with candy bags and plastic masks, they saw what happens when the mask doesn't come off when the night ends. You see, Halloween feeds off trust. We open our doors to strangers, we walk in the dark, we laugh at fear because we think it's all pretend. But every once in a while, someone decides to take advantage of that trust. Someone decides to make the pretending real. Maybe that's why these stories stick with us, because they remind us that fear doesn't need permission. It doesn't need magic or ghosts or monsters from the movies. All it needs is opportunity, a house with the lights off, a child answering the door, a phone ringing when you're alone. And as the years pass, the people who lived through these stories will never forget the sound of boots on stairs, the voice whispering through the static, the faint glow of a lantern moving just beyond the light. Those memories don't fade, they wait. They wait for Halloween night, when the world once again invites the darkness in. Maybe you're listening to this right now in your room. Lights off, headphones on. Maybe it's late and outside your window the wind has gone still. Maybe you've been hearing small noises, creaks, taps, footsteps you can't quite place. You tell yourself it's just the house settling, just your imagination. You tell yourself that because it's Halloween, and that's what we do. We lie to ourselves to make the night easier to survive. But deep down, you know the truth. The people in these stories didn't believe anything bad could happen to them either, until it did. And the scariest part? For every story that's been told, there are 100 others that never were. Stories whispered in police reports, buried in small-town rumors, locked behind unmarked doors. Stories that never made the news because the victims didn't live to tell them. That's why when the trick-or-treaters go home and the streets go silent, you should always remember one thing. Masks come off, but monsters don't. Next time you hear a knock at your door after midnight, or your phone rings from an unknown number, or you notice someone standing just beyond the streetlight with a lantern in their hands, don't assume it's just another Halloween prank. Because the night that celebrates fear, it has a way of bringing the real thing out to play. If you think this was as bad as it gets, you haven't heard what comes next. Because in the next 4 stories, Halloween doesn't just take lives, it takes away safety itself. Kids go missing, strangers break into homes, families discover what it truly means when the darkness knocks back. So when you blow out your pumpkin tonight and turn off the porch light, take one last look outside. Make sure the street is empty. Make sure the shadows stay still. And if you see a faint glow moving through the fog, whatever you do, don't follow it.